everyone's life is about their behaviors, okay? And the behaviors are driven by, the choices they make, the decisions, and all of those things are based on six core dimensions that every person controls. So life's about behaviors. You get good or bad result in your life based on your behaviors primarily. Of course, there's other things, but the whole person is comprised of six core components. That's your knowledge, so what you know, your skills, what you can do, your motives, what energizes you, what excels you to action or behavior, your traits, how do you deal with things and what helps you deal with things that are in those first three, the social role you choose to play or your tribe, your community, and your self-image. So how you show up to yourself and what you see when you look in the mirror.
Let's learn how our next guest gets up, dress up, and show up on purpose. Enjoy the episode. Hello, morning enthusiasts. Welcome to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lunid, and today I am honored to have a very special guest with us, Brent Kedzierski. Now, he is a leading expert in human-centered connected worker ecosystem. You're probably thinking, what does that all mean? And that's why he's here to tell us all about it. He's have nearly 40 years of experience in driving innovation and talking about the whole person. He has a book he's working on too, we'll dive into in a little bit, talking about the whole person and bringing your whole self into what you do daily, especially in the workplace. Now, he's held roles at Shell, Hexagon, focusing on employee well-being and sustainability. So I'm really excited to have him on here today. So with no further ado, Brent, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yes, it's my absolute pleasure. We love a hero's journey here at BMR. I'd love to talk about like your why and how you got started.
Well, sure. I mean, my story is a pretty simple, kind of a traditional, where you talked a little bit about my um, uh, background in terms of genealogy. And, I grew up in Pittsburgh in a suburb of the steel mills where I could see the steel mills in the back of my yard, the smoke coming out. And all of my relatives were steel workers or mill workers. And I really grew up with that whole idea of, ingenuity. If you didn't have something, you didn't have a part that would work, you'd create it, you'd make it yourself, you'd tool it. And then I started through high school and college doing a lot of industrial jobs. And I really was fascinated by the industrial psychology of work. Why did people work? What tools did they use? I got into a lot of studying about living conditions of workers in mill towns and near steel mills. And I was just researching the other day about a little community called Painters Row outside the Carnegie steel mills and how dilapidated and how the living conditions are so terrible. So I kind of always had a compassion for workers. And I started my career in DC doing a lot of behavioral science work with the military and studying, why a colonel might make a different decision than a captain or a general, and, why, pilots would be overloaded with sensory, stimuli and things like that. And so that was always something, and that got into this whole business of human performance engineering, where you looked at the environmental conditions and you looked at the person conditions and you kind of debugged or, investigated why people weren't happy in their jobs. And so I did a lot of these behavioral analysis of working conditions and job performance. And I spent a lot of time doing that in a governmental setting, so with big departments and agencies. And then I was recruited into Shell, and I started to do that on a kind of a global basis for Shell, being kind of their big transformation agent, their strategist when it came to big global people initiatives, things like global competence management or global learning. So that's kind of what I got into. That's my background. So one of my favorite things to do probably is to go like even to nursing homes and talk about old people, the people sitting there that had, years and years of experience to talk about their jobs in the 1950s or
Mm-hmm.
40s or 60s. But I find it very interesting, and that's what I've come to this whole bit within Hexagon and Shell about the connected worker. How do you use technology and engineering to improve the anatomy of somebody's work? So, and when we talk about anatomy, we're talking about like, bottlenecks and delays and bad data and unavailable data and poor working conditions, whether it's, ergonomics or whether it's the collaborative opportunities or anything like that. So that's a lot
How
to
do we? How do
but
we do that? How can we do that? Use innovation to actually use to connect employees and well-being of employees.
well, if you think about the whole connected worker history, the first connected workers probably were, people in the railroad industry years and years ago when they might use flags to, signal that, hey, the train is coming, or they might use whistles and,
Mhm.
so you would use sight and sound to communicate. And then you think about, maybe later on with construction workers on the highway where they would use walkie-talkies to communicate, hey, let the row of cars go. These ones have all passed. So we've always tried to connect people with the equipment that they use, with the people that are involved in their work, and with the data that's being produced all over their system. So if you think about it, in terms of connected workers today, we want the worker to be central in a human-centric design. So for years and years, we kind of forced productivity and automation as the big levers for productivity. Throw more automation at it, throw, more process at it. And now we're getting to the age where we're starting to use automation for the right things, meaning safety and, redundancy and degrading work, dangerous work. And we're starting to use it now to not only get all those things out of the way of the human and make the human's job a bit more enriched and safe, but we're also using it now to make the humans' work less aggravating, frustrating, and more enjoyable. So we've gone through these dimensions in society about work where, work was basically drudgery, difficult, demeaning,
Yeah.
dangerous. And then we got to a
Laborers.
point, yes. And then we got to a point where, we were focusing heavily on squeezing productivity out of people and doing quality management. And then we got to this era in the 80s where we said, we really got to have this war for talent because there's really great performers out there, it's what we call superior performers, and we've got average performers. And so the world was combined of basically 80% of the workers were somewhat, you could put them in an average bowl, and then 20% for some reason or the other would be exceptional. And it always had to do with factors around the environment or training or, individual motivation and things like that. So the idea became, how do we engineer work so we don't disenfranchise some people, but franchise everyone and bring everyone up to the same level where they can deliver their best self to the work and they can be happiest in the work. And so we started this war for talent where it unfortunately was about fighting other companies to get the best applicants in the door, the best resumes. But unfortunately, what happened is we get these best people in the door, and best people are always more mobile than average workers or average resumes, things like that. They just have more opportunity and they would leave. So you'd get them in the door, but you couldn't keep them in the door. So that initiated this age of worker experience. So it wasn't just about making the company attractive to entrants. It was about making it sustainable for people to stay with your company and make the working experience enjoyable and fulfilling and rewarding and growth orientated. So, that's where we're at today's world. And if you look at like Gen Z, they don't want to work to live. They want to live and work. They want it to be a blended experience where, work is part of their overall enrichment of their life. It's bettering their whole life. And they're looking at this whole person attributes of work. So work's got to change. We're all a little bit slow in changing it as fast as we need to make sure people are happy. The data's all out there, whether you look at Gartner or McKinsey or, Bain, they're all saying, engagement's at an all-time low. It used to be like 80% of people were disengaged. Well, now they're moving from really disengaged to kind of disenfranchised. So it's actually getting more intense. And so companies really have to start to think about re-engineering the workplace so that, it's a new evolution of work and life together.
And
And
we're not just
also,
talking about putting a gym in the facility anymore. This is going deeper than that. We're not just talking about putting a daycare center in the in the organization or yoga studio just to kind of incorporate that work-life balance where you can be happy, your well-being is important. So we're putting these say features on the premises to help your life become easier, but we're talking about sheer satisfaction. We're talking about people
right.
are happy to show up to work. We're talking about people are feeling compassionate about what they do and wanting to come back daily.
That's right. I mean, it's not about those cosmetic things, a
Yeah.
gym, a better parking or closer parking garage, discounted lunches. Those things are really normal table stakes today.
Yeah.
Uh, People don't want to have to go to work and have to stop and, after their commute, they've got to walk a half a mile to get to the building or, they don't want to have to stuff all their lunch in a small space or their coat. And, so yeah, it's really evolved to it's their enhancers. The person going in there saying, boy, this really enhances my work experience and my life experience. And you'll see that because you're seeing a lot of companies now, they're giving more mental health care programs. They're giving more wellness programs, so it's not just about being and providing a gym. It's providing maybe a personal health coach or, personalized health programs that people can sign up for and engage in. So it's building that community setting where people can flourish.
Yeah, yeah, and it's necessary, as you said, because the workplace is changing, just as the generation is changing. No, no, Gen Z or even millennials. I'm going as far back as millennial. I'm a millennial, and you compare us to baby boomers or generation before us. We're not willing to work 40 hours for 40 years. We get a watch and we go retire and sit somewhere else. We're looking to travel in the midst of it all. We're looking to find purpose more so than just showing up because the industries have changed. It's more of an information era as well too, especially with AI in the mix.
Right. And don't you think, I mean, people deserve it. I mean, my brother's a scientist and he does a lot of studying. He always talks about, people's lives, 2000 years ago when people lived to be, 35 years old, and that was the life expectancy or 42 years old. And in that time, they suffered to find food. They worked in, very dangerous work where, I remember looking at even like the Pittsburgh survey that they did in 1907. The per capita number of people that died per annum per year working was atrocious. I think in Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, where the steel mills were, out of every 1,000 people, there were a high percentage of people that died every year, and it was just expected. And, if you had, 30 people in the steel mill die a month, that was kind of just a regular month.
Mhm.
And, that would not be tolerated today. So as the world evolves and society evolves, the workplace has to evolve. And sometimes when we look at, I use this worldview called teacup. We look at technology. What's the advancements? How's technology helping people be better leaders and better workers? We look at the economic conditions. How are economics helping people to improve the condition of life and work? And then we look at consumerism or commerciality. We want new gadgets that are high tech, that are high concept, that are high touch, that perform multiple functions to make life more convenient. And then we look at the whole operational. How does the operational workplace exist today with, again, bad anatomy of work, delayed decisions, confusion, unnecessary meetings, unproductive meetings, all this wasteful, 60% of our work activity is wasted. It's about nothing. It's about talking about doing work and not doing work. People are interrupted every 7 minutes. So, and then we talk about the political unrest that's going on, so we've got all this political division and divide. We've got, Ukraine, and we have Gaza, and we have all these things going on. And so we put work and industry into that setting, and that creates, tensions that drive social change. So it's really something that companies have to pay a lot of attention to because, again, a lot of people now are concerned more about the type of company they work for. What's its mission purpose? How's its economic and environmental footprint? Is it helping? Is it being a servant to community? And I've always had this position that strong workers go home and make a dinner table that's strong, a family that's strong. They go out to their children's sports events and make a community strong. They take their children to church or community events to strengthen the community. That makes a stronger community, that makes stronger societies, that make a stronger world. So much of life starts with the 100,000 hours that people spend in their lifetime at work and how that 100,000 hours shapes them to be a better person. And that's what industry has to do is saying, look, we're taking this huge percentage out of someone's life, and do we make them a better person, or are we killing them with obesity, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, cardiovascular disease, sedentary lifestyle? Do they go home and flop on the couch and eat their suffering because of their work job? So, companies have to understand how much influence they have on society.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see some of the innovation that you've implemented to actually improve not just worker engagement, but efficiency in the workplace today.
Right. Well, if you look at what we say, even, at Hexagon, for example, we put together these connected worker solutions. And the objective of these solutions is really threefold that bleed into the human being. It's putting that person at the center, saying, what we do is that enriching the human and their job at work. Is it human centered? And then the next thing we do is, are we using real-time data and insights to make their decisions easier or more confident in their decisions, their troubleshooting, their problem solving, their interaction with their coworkers easier? Does it make virtual, synchronous and asynchronous connection with people easier? And then the third thing, does it deal with interoperability between people and systems and interfaces? So we used to live in this hierarchical siloed organizations where silos worked in isolation. And today, in a matrixed economy, in a matrix workforce, you've got to be able to reach across the aisles, understand what's going on in other dimensions of the organization, learn from that, reduce the cycle time of learning and performance and integration to promote innovation and well-being and all those things. So the solutions always go around what I call this psychology and synergy of work. So, every work task starts with, well, you've got to know when to do it. Then there's signals and data that come to help you start it. And then you start it, and then there's signals that tell you how it's going. And then during the course of getting all this information, you have to kind of make sense out of the world of that task. The problems will arise, you have to troubleshoot, make decisions, you have to integrate with people, you have to know when to escalate and when not to escalate. And then you have to learn how to, conclude a task and document and learn from it. So all the solutions, Hexagon, for example, try to take every element of work in a setting from a human perspective and say, how can we make that work experience better for the individual or the team? And that's kind of how we will look at things. And we look at things in terms of two platforms, environmental. So the whole thing about, are the performance expectations clear and is feedback really clear, really high quality feedback? Are the data, resources, information the best they can be? Are the incentives to do the work enabling? Meaning a lot of work it's disincentivizing to do a good job because sometimes the better job you do, you get all the work, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody else doesn't get it. Or, the more work you do, the better you do it, the more you get.
Yeah.
And or you get stuck in a rut because, you're the person that can be depended on to always do this job well. So we're going to always give you the same kind of junky task because you do it. Well, I don't want to do that task. And then at the individual level, you have to look at a person's whole person, their skills, their behaviors, their knowledge. And then you look at what motivates them in terms of the work intrinsically or extrinsically. Are they matching up with what you're asking them to do? And then the last thing is, how are we enhancing an individual's physical, intellectual capabilities to do more, to grow and improve themselves with technology? So that's kind of the work environment. That's where I've got into this whole person living that I like to advocate in parallel with this whole person approach to connected work or connected work.
Yeah, the human-centered piece of it. And I know you mentioned offline that you're currently working on a book. Not sure of the title yet, but it is around how to bring your whole self into the workplace, but not just that, to the community, to your family. And let's talk about how we individuals can incorporate some of the, I say, habits or rituals, because I know it really starts with a morning routine as well. So let's get into that.
Right. Well, if you think about your life and everybody everyone's life is about their behaviors, okay? And the behaviors are driven by, the choices they make, the decisions, and all of those things are based on 6 core dimensions that every person controls. So life's about behaviors. You get good or bad result in your life based on your behaviors primarily. Of course, there's other things. But the whole person is comprised of 6 core components. That's your knowledge, so what you know, your skills, what you can do, your motives, what energizes you, what excels you to action or behavior, your traits, how do you deal with things and what helps you deal with things that are in those first 3, the social role you choose to play or your tribe, your community, and your self-image. So how you show up to yourself and what you see when you look in the mirror. So it's those 6 behaviors. Now, those are the core dimensions that drive your behavior. Now, there's a lot of other things that other people will say, but for strategy's sake, we keep it to 6 because most other things will fall under one of those big spokes. And then what you have to do is you have to put that frame against a strategic frame, which I call a lot of times like the wheel of life. How do you look at things? And then we use all those things to turn on our brain chemicals, because at the end of the day, our behaviors drive our brain chemicals and our brain chemicals drive our behaviors. So let's talk about that. So if I were telling you, like, the knowledge you have is like what you choose to learn and how you choose to apply it. And so knowledge empowers everybody to make better or informed decisions, and that helps them achieve their goals. So when you wake up in the morning, you have to say, what am I trying to do? What knowledge do I need, or what knowledge do I have that I can apply to make my day better? And then you go to your skills. So, what is it what can you perform? What tasks can you really do effectively to achieve success in all those areas of your life, whether it's your romantic life, your financial life, your healthy life, all those things on that wheel, the spokes of the wheel of life. And then you think about, well, okay, what am I motivated to do? What fuels, your actions and your decisions? Are you motivated to lose weight and exercise? Are you motivated to go volunteer? What provides you the energy to pursue those goals you listed in the morning? And then the things like your traits. So, traits are different from skills. Traits are things like resilience or empathy or patience and, things like that. And everybody has a top three of their traits that really shape their character. And, if you ask somebody to define your three traits, they'll probably give you three right off the top of their head about you. And then it's about your self-image, about how you see yourself. And that's, your self-reflection, and self-awareness and self-image boost your confidence or it kills your confidence. It boosts your self-esteem or kills your self-esteem. And all that things about confidence and esteem, they influence your behaviors and thus your well-being. And then the last thing I put in this bundle is your social role. So how do you contribute to your community, whatever you define your community to? Your relationships, your sense of belonging and purpose. Because remember, humans have three things and that's it. People are all fallible, but they're adaptable. So they all are going to make mistakes. We're faulty people, but we can change. We all are social beings, so we want to have some kind of affiliation, some kind of social mirror to view us against in the world. And the last thing is we all want purpose. So again, look at those six elements that I talked about, and they all go back to those three things about being social, looking for purpose, and being growth oriented in terms of what you don't know or what you do know. And all those dimensions drive your behavior, right? So if you understand the importance of exercise and why a healthy diet can help you, that'll drive your behaviors. If you're a great communicator and you are really good at expressing your thoughts clearly and influencing others, you might put your best self in that regard. And same thing with, it goes down the list of motivation. If you really, like to join social groups or reach out to friends or, that can help you with your goals. And then the same thing with the traits and the self-image. So what every person does is they can probably align themselves to one of the original Carl Jung 12 archetypes, the warrior or the hero. And I always tell people in a lot of sessions I do, go find what archetype you are, and that'll help you build a brand for yourself. And what you do is you find out what are your strengths in all those six areas I told you about. What knowledge are you really good at or you need? What skills are you really good at or you need? What's really motivating you lately or not motivating you and why? And you build that to plan out your daily plan, your weekly plan, your monthly plan, and your kind of your big six life plan. So I think that's kind of the whole thing that I would say people to do. And what happens in all this, so we go back to that life one, say health and fitness. Okay, when you exercise, guess what? You're activating dopamine in your brain because, you're feeling like I'm achieving my fitness goals. Well, then when you exercise, you're releasing endorphins because endorphins are released through exercise. And then if you're choosing to behave with a healthy diet, you're releasing serotonin because serotonin is released by better, fruits and vegetables and micronutrients and all those kind of things. So, now you've taken that and then maybe you look at your career and you say, well, I'm releasing dopamine because I'm achieving my career goals. I'm getting serotonin released because I'm more satisfied in my job. And maybe I'm releasing Oxycontin because I'm having better social relationships with my work colleagues. So I can keep going on down the list from the financial elements or the family and friends or the romance or the, fun and recreation spokes of the wheel or your community contribution. So it's all about, getting a strategy for yourself saying, my life is about my behavior and the behaviors and choices and decisions I make. They're typically driven by me putting my best whole self into my life, which are those six things: my knowledge, my skills, my motives, my traits, my social role, and my self-image. And when I have a solid plan against my life wheel, it's going to release those drugs that I crave every day. So, for example, like if you're using Duolingo to learn a new language, every time you learn a new phrase, you're releasing brain chemicals. You go exercise, you're releasing brain chemicals. So a lot of people should be planning their days on how can I promote and release positive brain chemicals in my day through my behaviors rather than medicating these brain chemicals.
Yeah, well put. To summarize it, yeah, you're absolutely right. Releasing all these dopamine and serotonin just by habit, just by deciding to, I'm gonna work out this today, and the rest will take care of itself. And kind of leading into that to that satisfaction at work and finding that purpose, which is the ultimate core.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about brain chemicals, I mean, that's what we're trying to activate. And I think there's a new era where people are coming, I'm going to go to a dopamine, area. I want some pleasure or, oxytocin, I want love, or I want serotonin, I want intimacy, or, what is it that you're going for? I want, some emotional connection and that's going to boost serotonin or, whatever it might be. I want bonding with someone, so I want that, elevated, oxytocin or whatever it might be.
hmm And for morning routines, let's talk about yours. How do you get up, dress up, and show up? And I know you do it intentionally to kind of encompass the aforementioned.
Right. So I found that, we live in a world today of what I call content shock. So there's more content out there than we can consume. So we have to make deliberate choices of where we spend our time and in what we're doing. So I try to really have a routine that says, okay, I'm going to get up and I got to achieve these things. So obviously I have the Fitbit watches and, we track ourselves. Did we walk our 10,000 steps? Did I get my 9 hours of sleep? Did I, was I really mindful in doing that? So I try to have my day planned out where I do try to activate all those brain chemicals. So I get up, I spend time with my dogs, which is important to me because, they wake me up at a very regimented, get me up at, 6:30 in the morning, and I have my coffee with them and watch a little bit of my news. Might read a few of my library-based magazines that I enjoy, and all this stuff's on a schedule. Then I like to do, my workout, and then I might do a little bit of writing because I enjoy my writing. And through all of that, I'm getting my brain chemicals, okay? So all of that stuff will typically take me to about 11 o'clock.
hmm
And then what I like to do is make sure at that time, and I can show you, I've got my water jug here that I make sure I have, not just two of these a day, but I try to have about four of these a day. And so I'm checking myself. Did I maintain my water intake? Did I get my exercise in? Was my exercise varied? So, my portfolio, I love a maxi climber that I use. And I like that. Now, I like to get outside and hike too because I live in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So I'm afforded a wonderful opportunity to be outside with the nature. And then I have my hobbies that I enjoy doing. I like to do things that are two ways of tinkering. I do physical tinkering. That might be something, with my hands that I enjoy doing. I do like to paint and things like that. That's really just, I'm not very good. I do it only for me. With no other expectations, but I love to do it. And I love to like build things, with different creative aspects. And I also love my research. So what I do is I have this research that I think I've coined the frame. It's tangentialism, where basically I take a topic and it's like, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, I think but I use it for historical techniques. I'll find like maybe a Civil War statue that was built by someone, some artist, and then I'll research the artist, and I'll research some piece of art that he or she developed, and then I'll go back, and it takes me back to like 6 degrees from the initial thing that I researched, and I find that just fascinating work, because what it does is something that's going on today with history is we're getting to a deeper level of historical investigation, because a lot of the primary research has been done on whether it's Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or whoever. And now you can go to deeper aspects of the research. So again, I love to do those things. So at the end of my day, it's something where I really feel I've accomplished at least three major things in addition to my standard day achievement. The standard day is, did you drink your water? Did you walk your 10,000 steps? Did you do all the things you typically have to do with the dogs and this and that? But then I have three other things that I did. Did I finish an article? Did I go to trivia night with my neighbors, my friends? Did I do this? So
And
it's
all
all,
those goals keep you happy. Goals really make people happy. Having something to work towards and strive for. Really.
well, and I think it's the portfolio of goals that you're getting all those brain chemicals. And I think people are going to really talk more about brain chemicals and, it's going to almost be like, did you get your fruits and vegetables? Well, did you get your serotonin and your dopamine today?
Yeah, I like that. Tell us, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you?
Well, I'm all over the Hexagon website, and they've got a lot of great information that we put out there about human centricity. And I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to go out and just send me an invite to LinkedIn. And I love to converse with people and hear what they have experienced in their life and their, career journeys, and anything related to human performance or history. I'm always excited to talk to somebody about.
It's been such a pleasure having you on. I really love the notion of did you get your dopamine? Did you get your serotonin today? No one has put it that way, but it is really what we're chasing, isn't it? That's why people get into drugs and in that field, those feel good activities. So
Right. Well, and if you think about, this is the epidemic. Most people turn to drugs because their dopamine is shot. They're depressed. Most people turn to drugs because they've got no serotonin. Most people, and if they would think about, well, let's do the natural way to make ourselves feel better. Let's really try that first. And then if that doesn't work, go to your primary care physician and maybe they can help you to augment your brain chemicals, but, don't turn to the abusing methods that so many unfortunately turn to.
yeah, the self-medicating, it's real. Yeah. Brent, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed talking to you.
Perfect. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please comment and tell us what was your favorite part, your favorite habit that you are going to try out for yourself today. Comment below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, I will see you at the top of your best morning routine ever. Stay blessed.